It was a dark and stormy night when my friends and I decided to explore the abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town. The old building had been closed down for years after reports of strange occurrences and unexplained deaths. The group consisted of Jenny, Sarah, Tom, myself and Alex. We had heard about the asylum from the town's folklore and were curious to see if the rumors were true. As we approached the entrance, the wrought iron gates creaked open, seemingly of their own accord. We hesitated, but curiosity got the better of us, and we ventured inside. The interior of the asylum was just as creepy as we had imagined. The walls were peeling, and there was a layer of dust and grime covering everything. We split up to explore the different wings of the building. Jenny and I walked down a long hallway, our footsteps echoing eerily. Suddenly, we heard a door slam shut and we froze in our tracks. "Did you hear that?" Jenny whispered. "Yeah, let's check it out," I said, my voice trembling slightly. We followed the sound to a room at the end of the hallway. The door was slightly ajar and a dim light was shining from inside. As we pushed the door open, we saw an old patient room, complete with a rusted bed and a broken window. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us and we were plunged into darkness. "Mark, are you there?" Jenny called out, her voice trembling. "I'm here, hold on," I replied, fumbling for my flashlight. As I shone the beam of light around the room, we saw a figure standing in the corner. It was an old woman, dressed in a hospital gown, with long white hair. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The woman didn't answer, but instead, she started to move towards us, her eyes fixed on us. Jenny and I ran out of the room, the woman's laughter echoing behind us. Meanwhile, Sarah, Tom, and Alex had split up to explore the other parts of the building. They stumbled upon a room filled with old medical equipment covered in cobwebs and dust. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise coming from the corner of the room. As they approached, they saw a figure lying on the ground. It was a man, dressed in a straitjacket, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. "Help me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Sarah, Tom, and Alex tried to free him from the straitjacket, but it was too tight. Suddenly, the man started convulsing, his eyes rolling back into his head. They ran out of the room, just as the man let out a blood-curdling scream. We reunited in the main hallway, our hearts pounding with fear. "We have to get out of here," Jenny said, her voice shaking. As we ran towards the entrance, we saw the old woman standing in front of us, blocking our way. "Leave now, while you still can," she hissed. We turned and ran, the sound of our footsteps echoing through the empty asylum. Just as we reached the exit, the doors slammed shut, trapping us inside. We turned to face the old woman, who was now standing in front of us, surrounded by a group of ghostly apparitions. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her eyes glowing with a sinister light. We huddled together in fear as the ghostly apparition circled around us. We could hear the old woman's voice whispering in our ears, warning us of the danger we had put ourselves in. Suddenly, a bright light shone through the cracks in the walls, and the ghostly apparitions disappeared. The doors to the asylum opened, and a figure stepped inside. It was an old man, dressed in a white lab coat, with a kind face and gentle eyes. He introduced himself as Dr. William, the former head of the asylum. Dr. William explained to us that the asylum had been closed down years ago after a series of unexplained deaths occurred within its walls. The ghosts that haunted the asylum were the restless spirits of the patients who had died there, seeking revenge on the living. However, Dr. William also revealed that he had been conducting experiments on the patients, trying to find a cure for mental illness. He had used unethical methods, such as electroshock therapy and lobotomies, which had caused the patients immense pain and suffering. Feeling guilty for his actions, Dr. William had locked himself inside the asylum, determined to atone for his sins. We listened to Dr. William's story with horror and disgust. We realized that we had been foolish to come to the asylum, and we vowed never to return. As we left the building, we saw Dr. William standing at the entrance, his head bowed in shame. We knew that he would spend the rest of his days haunted by the ghosts of his past. We never spoke of our experience at the abandoned asylum again until now, but we could still hear the screams and laughter of the ghosts echoing in our minds. We knew that we had come close to death that night, and we were grateful to have escaped with our lives. Years later, the town council decided to demolish the abandoned asylum in an attempt to rid the town of its dark past. But some say that the ghost still lingered, haunting the town's inhabitants and reminding them of the horrors that had occurred within the asylum's walls. I had been working at my job for a few months when I first noticed something strange happening. It was a small office, just a few of us working there, and I always thought it was a safe and secure environment. But then things started to change. It started with small things. A file that I knew I had put on my desk would go missing, only to turn up in a drawer that I never used. Pens and pencils would disappear, only to reappear in the same place a few days later. I thought I was just being forgetful, but then I began to feel like I was being watched. One evening, I stayed late to finish up some work. The office was completely empty, and I felt like I was the only person there. But then I heard a sound, like someone was shuffling papers in the next room. I got up to investigate, but there was no one there. I thought I was just being paranoid, so I went back to my desk and continued working. But then the sound came again, louder this time, and I knew that I wasn't alone. I got up again, and this time I saw something moving in the corner of my eye. I turned around, and there it was. It was a figure, hunched over and crawling on all fours. It had long, gnarled fingers and dark, sunken eyes that seemed to stare right through me. I froze in terror as it crawled towards me, inching closer and closer. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then it stopped, just a few feet away from me. It looked up, and I saw that it had no face, just a gaping hole where its features should have been. It let out a low, guttural growl, and I knew that I was in danger. I turned and ran, sprinting for the door. But the figure was fast, faster than anything I had ever seen. It pursued me, chasing me down the hallways and through the empty rooms of the office. I could feel its hot breath on the back of my neck, and I knew that I was running out of time. I burst through the front door of the office, gasping for breath. I turned back to see if it was still following me, but there was nothing there. The street was quiet and empty, and I was alone. From that day on, I knew that I had to leave my job. I never went back to that office, and I never found out what had been haunting it. But I knew that I had come face to face with something truly terrifying, something that was beyond my understanding. And I knew that I had been lucky to escape with my life. Deep in the heart of the forest lies an ancient place, a place where darkness reigns, and the trees loom overhead like towering giants. There is a path that leads through this forest, a path that many have taken over the years, but few have returned from. The forest is said to be haunted, cursed by the spirits of the dead, and those who enter are doomed to never leave. One evening, a group of friends decided to explore the forest, unaware of the dangers that lurked within. They laughed and joked as they walked, feeling invincible in the safety of each other's company. But as they ventured further into the forest, the air grew thick with an eerie silence, and the trees closed in around them like an ominous embrace. Suddenly, they heard a twig snap in the darkness, and they froze. They strained their eyes, peering into the shadows, trying to see what had made the sound. They heard the rustling of leaves, the creaking of branches, and the whispers of the wind. Then, they heard a voice that chilled them to the bone. "Welcome," the voice said, "to the forest of the damned." The friends turned to run, but they found themselves surrounded by a wall of trees, as if the forest itself was alive and had trapped them inside. They stumbled and fell, tripping over roots and rocks, as they tried to find a way out. But the forest seemed to be playing with them, leading them in circles, confusing their senses. As the night wore on, the forest became more sinister, more malevolent. They heard the sound of footsteps crunching on leaves, coming closer and closer. They saw shadows moving in the darkness, heard whispers and laughter, but no one was there. The forest was alive with the spirits of the dead, and they were not happy. They finally came to a clearing, a place where the trees thinned out and the moonlight shone down like a spotlight. They saw a figure standing in the center of the clearing, a figure that sent shivers down their spines. It was a woman, dressed in a long white gown, her hair wild and tangled. Her eyes were black as coal, and she stared at them with a cold, empty gaze. "You should not have come here," she said, her voice hollow and lifeless. The friends screamed and ran, fleeing back into the darkness of the forest. They heard the woman's laughter echoing through the trees, a sound that chilled them to the bone. They ran and ran, not stopping until they finally stumbled out of the forest, gasping for breath. They never spoke of their experience in the forest again, but they knew they had come face to face with something truly terrifying, something that was beyond their understanding. And they knew that they had been lucky to escape with their lives. Thank you for your time. We hope you enjoyed these stories. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Stay tuned for more stories.